everybody. I'm John Bell. I'm your host this evening for the Harbinger Report. And I entitled this show Red Dawn. And basically, it's because the topic is the takeover of our country. I had some people complaining this week that I'm not covering enough, cryptid and dogman content. And I love cryptid and dogman content, but that is no longer the name of the show. That was my last show, dogmancams.com. But you'll notice a lot of people in the field of cryptids are getting out of it. Look, Dark Waters got out of it. Several are getting out of it, and I think part of the reason, I don't want to put words in his mouth or other people's, but I think part of the reason is material in that subject is very, very hard to come by. At least credible material. Um, and it seems lately it's been getting harder and harder to find. I love cryptid and dogmen encounters reports, and I love to report on them. I love to bring on witnesses and interview them about their stories and what they experienced. Like I said, though, it's getting harder and harder to find credible witnesses. That doesn't mean there's less stuff going on out there, but it's harder to find credible witnesses to come forward to talk about it. So if I find them, I will gladly bring them. And if you want to see them, if you know anybody, you know anything that you can get me in touch with people that will be willing to come on the show, I'd be happy to hear them out. And if I like what they have to say and believe that they have some degree of credibility, I will gladly bring them on and show them for the audience. But until then, I can't just run a thing on cryptids if I can't find enough stories. Now, people do creepy pasta stuff all the time, but that's not my thing. My thing is doing reality and real stories as much as I can prove or believe within reason. I'm not doing police investigations and background checks on these people. I just don't have the kind of time for that, or money or resources. So it's just not a practicality. But when my focus is on the Harbinger Report and this newer channel, the reason it's called the Harbinger Report is because I'm harbinging on different aspects of things that are going on in the world today. It's more like an Art Bell format. Art Bell, he did, creepy stuff, but he did all kinds of topics from UFOs to aliens to witchcraft to just anything and everything across the board. And that's what I'm trying to expand to, just doing conspiracy truths is a focus. But also for me in particular, one thing that sets me apart and why I named it Harbinger Report is because for me, everything that's happening right now is playing out on a biblical scale. What we see going on in the world right now, the high crazy we see going on, this has all been prophesied to take place and happen in these times in the Bible and by different prophets and witnesses throughout the centuries. Saints and all too that have given records of stuff that we're experiencing right now, even though it was hundreds or thousands of years ago that they made it. I've got a book sitting right next to me, The Reign of the Antichrist. They quote first century Christians in here that are talking about the end times that we're living in right now and the coming reign of the Antichrist. And that's what I claim is happening right now. Another book right next to me. Great book, The End Times. All right. That said, I read a lot. I've got a gigantic library in my house. I've got books stacked everywhere. I've got so many books I can't even get to them. They're just boxes and boxes of books everywhere. But anyway, so for me personally, because I believe we're in a spiritual war right now, especially that's getting worse and worse between the warriors of good versus the servants of evil. And right now we're in a time where evil, communism, Satanism, communism, Marxism is becoming the norm in the United States instead of freedom, instead of liberty, instead of free speech, And that's not American. Americans always been anti-communist, always been anti-socialist, anti-Marxist socialism. All right, that's not American. But the powers that be that have the kabillions of money, if that's even a word, It is now. They buy up the universities. They buy up the professors. They buy out the ones who win the prizes. They control everything, not just big pharma. They control big education. They control entertainment. They've got the money and the resources to control everything. And they're the ones that are pushing these idealisms and ideologies on our culture. Um, they target the young in education system, and also they target them again through the entertainment system. And in the entertainment system, there's no such thing as free speech. If you're a conservative, you're censored, you're blacklisted, and you're kicked out. All right. That all by the people who scream tolerance. They're the most intolerant people they are, you know? And it's funny, all the time, these leftists, when they go crazy on you, they want to start screaming at you, calling you a fascist. They don't even know what the definition of fascism is. They're actually supporting fascism. Fascism is when big business is in bed with big government working together against you. That's fascism. That's what we have going on in our country today, fascism. But that doesn't make you a fascist if you believe in American values, in freedom, and liberty, and rights, and free speech. And you know what the definition of free speech actually is? It means you have the right to offend people. That's the definition of free speech, or a definition of it. If you didn't have the right to offend these little snowflakes, it wouldn't be free speech. But just because it disagrees with their view that has to be totalitarian and one-sided, then they accuse you of everything under the sun. You see? And that's not American. That's not liberty. That's not free speech. And it's wrong, and it's evil, and it's serving wrong and evil. Okay, let's get into it. Some major news events that have taken place recently. All right, here's the biggest. Putin threatens war. And when we say war, we're talking World War III war. We're talking nuclear bombs war. We're talking Armageddon. You see this flag behind me? Do you see how it has like tears and rips in it? All right. That's because it's a reminder that our freedom and liberty is under duress. We're under attack. And people need to understand this. We're on the verge of a global nuclear war. You remember the movie War Games? Go watch it. The only way to win is not to start it because everyone loses, except the globalists. It's their plan. So Putin threatens war as West prepares to lift restrictions on cruise missiles. Now, this is huge. A lot of people and friends of mine, I got to argue with friends of mine, good-hearted people, but they're misguided. They're misunderstanding. And why? Because they listen to Fox News and CNN. Stop watching mainstream damn media. It's BS. It's propaganda. It's government propaganda to manipulate and control your brain. Case in point, Fox News, fair and balanced. 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 You know what that is? That is a psychological manipulation to get past your filter and get into your subconscious. When the brain hears something enough times, it starts to believe it. That's why I tell people, be positive. Don't be negative. Don't be critical. Don't be a pessimist all the time. Be positive. If you tell your brain you can't do something, you can't do it. Even if a doctor gives you a diagnosis, don't accept that completely in your brain. Your brain will make it real. When there's other times where the brain can adapt and the body can adapt, where you can do things that doctors don't understand. We call those miracles, all right? Especially when you invoke God's help, you know? You got to get the mind, body, spirit connection in line. But anyway, going back to the topic. So, friends of mine want to say, Putin is so bad, blah 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 blah. And I'm not a Russophile. I'm not a Putin fanatic. But I will say this: what you hear in the U.S. media about Putin is a lie. I listen to what Putin says out of his own mouth. I listen to what his advisors and generals say out of their own mouth. And what they say is completely different than what you hear in the US news media, at least mainstream news media. You need to go to independent news medias to find out real information and, frankly, real journalism. There's no such thing as real journalism outside of independent news anymore. There's not. All the mainstream news agencies, they're controlled by government, they're controlled by their editors, and they're just actors that read a piece of paper from a script or on a teleprompter. They're actors. They're not journalists. They don't do real journalism. They don't hit the hard questions. And not only that, many of them are paid off to report specific or certain ways, which that shouldn't even be legal. I heard yesterday in the news, they said that Bill Gates pays $1 billion a year for news. What's the point in news and a free press in our country if it has to be bought and paid for? During the Bush Jr., during his administration, he got busted paying $6 million to news agencies to affect what they're telling you on the news. And that's outside of the editors that control these companies, which are all globalists, pushing a one-sided mission. They fake that they're fair and balanced, but they could be anything farther from. Now, the problem here is it's not Putin that's escalating this war or bringing us into World War III. Okay, it's not Putin. It's the United States. It's the UN. It's NATO. They are forcing Russia more and more and more. It is the United States. It's not the Ukraine war against Russia. It's the US using the Ukraine against Russia. That's what it is. That's the truth of it. And I know because I served in military units that took part in what was going on there in 2014 that set the stage and the puppet show for the U.S. for what's happening right now. And how crazy is it? We have 9/11, which is the excuse for us to go to war for 20-something years in the Middle East that the U.S. that citizens of the U.S. don't even want. And then they're like, well, hey, since we're here, why don't we just go over here and attack Saddam Hussein and take over Iraq? And, since we're here already. And then that happens, right? It had nothing to do with the war, but we're just going to make it a part of the war anyway. Remember the weapons of mass destruction that turned out to be an effing lie? Okay? No responsibility there. You know what I'm saying? No responsibility whatsoever for that. For completely lying to the American people on why we went to war. Why we're spending billions and billions in war. Why we had soldiers that were injured over there. Most of them playing volleyball, but still. It wasn't much of an army when we attacked, but there were casualties. And there were people that were impacted. How about Gulf War syndrome? No one's talking about that except Sir Francis Boyles. Dr. Francis Boyles talks about Gulf War syndrome. We had more people that were injured in the Gulf War from other things than bullets. Imagine that. And if you listen to what Dr. Francis Boyles is saying about newer things on the same lines, it'd be worth looking him up and listening to what that man has to say. Could save your life and your families. All right. And I'll go on from that. So the U.S. is forcing Russia into a war. The U.S. is escalating, not only using the Ukraine as a proxy to attack, but now the United States is saying we're going to start using our missiles to attack the interior of Russia. Russia says, hold on now. That's a full act of war. Full act of war. So now you're declaring war against us. All right? That's what's happening. We, the U.S., the powers that be, which are damn evil, all right? Damn evil, are starting World War III. And you got to understand the bigger picture, wider picture. The bigger picture is the globalists, not just in the U.S., but of Germany, of France, of the EU, okay? Now of Brazil, now of Mexico, in these stolen elections, all right? all stolen. That's the new thing now, not including just those elections or in the United States, but how about in the Vatican? All right, how about in the Vatican? Look, remember, I put this up. George Soros, Barack Obama, Hillary, as I like to call that demon from hell, orchestrated a coup in the Vatican to overthrow the conservative Pope Benedict and replace him with a radical leftist, Francis. I won't even call that son of a bitch a pope. According to the group of Catholic leaders, and that was put out by WikiLeaks. You remember why Julian Assange was in prison for umpteen years, right? Now, gee, I wonder, could that be true at all? Let's look at this. Oh, look at that. Pope Francis sees himself as a socialist and a communist, and he said that Jesus was too. By the way, that's blasphemy. All right. So here you go. One thing that's interesting about that is no less than five former popes and canonized saints like John Paul II have said you cannot be even a moderate socialist or communist and call yourself a Christian, let alone a pope. It doesn't work. That's like saying we're going to hire someone from the Satanic Church to head up the Catholic Church in the Vatican. It can't happen. It can't work. They're completely opposing ideologies. And communism and socialism are atheistic. They hate God. And in history, when they take over from countries within, like the French Revolution, like the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia, then what happens is, what do they do next once they gain full power? They start killing. First, they take all the guns, all right? And since I brought that up, if I can find my quote, I hope I have it. It's hard to keep track of so many things. You know what? Son of a biscuit. I'm not seeing it right when I'm in the swing of it. There's a quote I'm looking for from, let's see if I can find it. Problem is my photos are full. It says you're a bad person. You use too many photos when you try to talk. So it only allows me to do so much. Anyway, I'm trying to find a quote from Mao Zedong of China, who killed arguably 1 billion of his own people in a great plan, which I say matches the that was the beta test for the Great Reset of Karl Schwab, which we're experiencing now. All right, and the great plan that they did in Russia. Well, that was to get rid of all people in rural areas and force them into the essentially 15-minute cities where they can be tracked and controlled much easier, and then bring in the social credit score and the shaming and blah, 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 blah. That was the beta test in China. It was the globalists that put Mao Zedong in China in power and turned China into communist, all right, because these are communist leaders. I don't even know if they're actually truly communists. I know that they use communist. They're not communists ultimately because they're Satanists. Many of them. I mean, they're straight out like demon Satanists. And they actually make fun of people that are atheists, but they use atheism, they use communism, they use Marxist socialism because they're proven tools to destroy and erode countries. So it's a tool. And that's how they use that little playbook. But the truth is, they actually make fun of the people that follow them with that atheism because they believe that you're stupid if you're not religious. They just believe that the true religion is under Lucifer instead of Jesus. And that's where they are wrong. Anyway, and they're evil, they're gutless, they're heartless, they're soulless. They have no love, they have no empathy. These are the things that make us human. These are the things that make us American. These are the things that make us great. All right? It's not weakness to have love. It's not weakness to have empathy. It's not weakness to want to help people and take care of people and be a good person and strive for values instead of just vice and sin and do without will. Man, I tell you what, when I've done without will in my life, it's only led me to pain and to regret and to ruin. You know, you we're not born to live that way. That's why God gives us laws. That's why God gives us the 10 commandments. It's not so that he can force us to obey. It's so that we can live better lives and be more fulfilled. God knows, like a parent, when you smack a child reaching for a hot stove, you're not trying to just be mean to the child. You're trying to teach the child something it doesn't understand. But ultimately, your intention is you want the best for that child, and you don't want the child to get hurt. That's what the 10 commandments are. Society, our country, the United States was built on Christianity and the values of Christianity. The only reason our country is going down the drain is because we're removing those values of Christianity. All right. The quote I was looking for, I'm not going to be able to find it right now, I'll try and show it next time, was Mao Zedong of China saying that all political power comes from the end of a barrel, meaning guns, 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 guns. And he also goes on to say that the Communist Party in China must control all the guns so that the people can't rise up against the Communist Party to have freedom, to have a revolution. So they stay in power. Only one side can hold the guns. Children have to be taught the real history of the world. They need to know what happens in the past when only the government has guns. A government takes away citizens' right to bear arms. It becomes a citizen's duty to take away government's right to govern. How long are we going to put up with having our free speech removed, having our freedoms removed, having weaponized replacement migration, to where governments, as we can see what the agenda is starting to happen in the US, but it's happening around the world. If you try to defend yourself, you will be the one who's punished, not the violator, not the criminal, not the one trying to hurt you and your family. The citizen becomes second. Why are all these handouts being given to all the illegal immigrants? Well, including vehicles, including houses, including housing and house loans and jobs, and it's not given to local citizens. In my own town, you go up and down the street here, all the gas stations, most of them are immigrants. Why? Because the government gives them giant tax breaks that it doesn't give to the local citizens that grew up here and worked here their whole lives. That's an injustice. That's an injustice. Oh, to conquer a nation, first you must disarm its citizens. Adolf Hitler, all right? First, you must disarm its citizens. And in the debate, Kamala said, we're not going after guns, which is a complete lie, because even the week before, she stated that they were going to try to take guns. Remember the school shooting that took place? Well, it wasn't even a day old in that story, and Biden and Kamala are online saying that we've got to enact emergency laws to take guns from citizens. Enough's enough. But here's the truth of it. If there's crazy people out there shooting citizens and shooting children in our schools, the police aren't going to protect you. I promise you. All right? I know from experience. They're not going to protect you. They'll come, but they're not saving your life if someone in there is shooting up children. What you need to do is you need to own guns. You need to carry guns. There should be no such thing as gun-free zones. That's not American. If you're in a gun-free zone, you're a damn victim. A victim waiting to happen. Waiting to happen. We don't believe in gun-free zones. We believe in the right to carry and bear arms so that when there are crazy people, you can protect people, your life and others. If there's school shootings, that doesn't mean we got to disarm the good people. We need the good people to be armed so that when the crazy people come, you can stop it before it escalates, before people are dead. That's gun violence in schools means we need more guns in the hands of responsible people. That's what it means. And I can tell you, as a former member of law enforcement, that's how you save lives. There's a picture I love showing where it says an entire police force on the phone is not as good as one gun in your hand.
I feel like we should go this way. This is worse.
We're gonna fucking die. There's a fucking shooter.
Y'all get some real shit. That's your jacket.
They're at the concert. Somebody got shot there. Somebody got shot at the concert, Rick Ross. Here? Uh-huh. Are they gonna do something? They all ran that way. All of them ran that way.
Yeah, and the trooper vehicles all drove that way.
I have my child here. So does everybody else.
The woman said, "Oh, I have my child here. So does everyone else." It was, I believe, it was a state fair somewhere going on in New York area, I believe. And there was a shooter, and you see, there's mass panic, and people are running everywhere and freaking out, and now they're worried about their kids, as they should be. The solution is not disarming the public. The solution is arming responsible citizens. You know, back in the day in the United States, there used to be towns that were so dangerous that they made it a law you had to carry a gun. Had to, by law. Guess what happened? Crime went away. Imagine that. Crime disappeared. All right? True story. That's how you deal with it. If you disarm citizens, then you're nothing but a victim. When the country of America was founded, everybody carried guns. Everybody. 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 When I grew up as a kid, in my high school, every single person in their vehicle outside had a gun rack with loaded guns in them. You know how many school shootings we had? 0. None. You see the difference? Everyone was loaded to bear. That's how it was back in the day. All right? If you're not armed, you're a victim waiting to happen. We have the Second Amendment for a reason. America was founded on guns, and it wasn't founded so that you could be a sports shooter or a hunter. It was founded so that you could protect yourself from tyranny, which included the tyranny from the government itself. No free man shall ever be disbarred the use of arms. The strongest reason for the people to retain the right and keep and bear arms is a last resort to protect themselves against tyranny in the government. I've never in my lifetime seen more tyranny in governments around the world, including in the United States, as I have today. It's the last time on planet Earth that you want to give up your guns. When a nation mistrusts its citizens with guns, it's sending a clear message. It no longer trusts its citizens because such a government has evil plans. Evil plans. These are people that lived under tyranny. They understood this. They understood that message. So again, we are provoking World War III. Let me tell you, if it goes to an all-out nuclear war with the United States, the United States is not going to win. I hate to tell you. If we go to an all-out nuclear war, and I'm talking worldwide, it won't just be between U.S. and Russia. It probably won't even start between U.S. and Russia. But it will get out of hand, and it will expand to several countries, and it will become a worldwide nuclear war. And I promise you, before Almighty God, the United States will not survive. Will not survive. We will not survive. God told me years ago when I was a kid that America was going to fall in one single day and would never be America again, would never rebuild. Not what it is now. We don't want nuclear war. The globalists want nuclear war because in their plan of the Great Reset, right, has nothing to do with COVID was only an instrument of that. So ignore that. Just the Great Reset. That's all I'm pointing out here. The other is just a tool of control in many ways. I mean, that's oversimplification, but you get the idea, hopefully. The globalists want nuclear war. They're forcing nuclear war because they believe they have a motto called order out of chaos. They believe if they can destroy the existing systems of government, then what you do is you step back and you get all your enemies to fight each other. Then when they're all destroyed and even the survivors greatly weakened, then you come in fresh and you dominate everybody. And you're like, yeah, bow. Oh, almost said a bad word. But yeah, so that's their plan. Their plan is they want to destroy Russia. They want to destroy the US. They want to destroy part of China. They want to destroy all the existing structures so they can come in with their one world government, with their new world order. And what did we say? What did we say up here? That they replaced the conservative Pope Benedict with a false pope who was going to push globalism, right? Who's going to push globalism? Gee, let's look at this. Francis calls for a new world order after the pandemic. And that's not the first time. He's calling for a new world order. A new world order. He's out there marching for the globalist communist agenda. It's not Catholic. He's not leading the Catholic Church. I'm a Catholic theologian, all right? Trained at the highest university in the United States for Catholicism, or one of them arguably, which is Franciscan University, with some of the biggest names and theologians of the Catholic Church, like Dr. Scott Hahn, Dr. Regis, Dr. Mark Marivalli, very good men, highly respect. And I also studied towards my master's in Rome with the Vatican, with the Pontifical University, the Angelicum, the University of St. Thomas Aquinas, where Pope John Paul II, Saint John Paul II, defended his thesis for his PhD. And if you can understand a word of what that man says, power to you, because if you read his stuff, it is complicated. That's deep. That man was a huge intellect. I'm not. I know a lot of stuff, but I'm not an intellectual. These intellectuals, man, it's a different gene. That's all I can say. So yeah, you got the Pope here calling for a new world order. Oh, look at this. The WEF, World Economic Forum, admits COVID was a test. In YouTube, I'm just reporting the news here. Was a test of public obedience to the globalist New World Order. All right. All right. Just like I'm saying, that's what the Great Reset is. It's all moving towards a one world government. And in order to create that one world government, you must destroy freedom. You must destroy independence, self-reliance, free speech. You must destroy that so that we can be made into a world of slaves in the one world government. So much so that the Bible warns us about the coming mark of the beast. And that mark of the beast, according to Bill Hates, is an AI system that will connect the human brain directly to AI. Directly. You will not need a computer. You will not need a phone anymore. It's a direct AI system. Tech giant Nokia CEO tells Davos meeting, cell phones will be built directly into our bodies, directly into the human brain. That is the mark of the beast. And once someone accepts that mark of the beast, you are no longer yourself. You are now controlled by the AI. And how much influence that AI has over you? Well, in part, Bill Gates said it's going to give you direct orders and tell you what to do. And if you follow those orders, you'll get digital money, which is another future thing coming. They're going to destroy our economy and our cash system because they want us in a digital coin, which is ultimately going to be a one world digital coin. Okay. So that's where things are headed. And that's the mark of the beast. Stay away from the mark of the beast. The mark of the beast is not vaccines. It's going to be some type of mark that connects the human brain. Now, can they develop a vaccine that accomplishes that? Yeah, possibly. What they can do with technology today is levels of insanity. I mean, most people wouldn't believe if you actually understood the technology we have. I've listened to U.S. generals that have said, we've got technology so advanced now, you wouldn't believe it even if you saw it. All right. Canadian Prime Minister Trudeau, that sock monkey of a, okay, fully supports Ukraine using NATO long-range missiles on Russia day after Putin said it would spark World War III. All right. He's talking about these. That's what he's talking about. And have no, you look at the American flag on these things. What this is saying we're going to start using American missiles on the infrastructure inside Russia. That's an act of full-out war. And it's an act that the United States and NATO are the aggressors of, that we are starting. We are starting this war. All right. And this sock monkey, he says that he believes that the greatest form of government is China, communism. Dude, that man should be drug out of office, tried, and lynched by his own people. He just declared he's going to turn Canada into a communist country. And if you look, I mean, does Canada not have any laws trying to defend themselves from that? I mean, the man just said, I'm a traitor to my country and to my people. And if you look at the oppressions going on in Canada, that's absolutely true. 100%. Man's a piece of crap. UN pact for future digital IDs, vaccine passports, and massive censorship. Again, just reporting on the news. Covered that. This is our future. This, again, goes off of the Chinese, the Great Plan, with the social ID system, the social credit score. Here, you're going to have a digital ID system. It's going to become your passport. It's going to have all your information on it, and it's going to be used as a social credit score. If you're not a good little globalist, you get punished. Here's a video I tried to upload several times, but I could not do it. In the news this last week, we were memorializing the firefighters that perished in 9/11. I have a good buddy of mine that was a roommate of mine in college. He's a professor now, but you wouldn't know it because he loves like playing fireman and working at the fire department more than he likes being a college professor. And that's, I don't know any college professors who like spend all their free time playing around with the fire department, but he loves it. And hey, you know, I mean, you could do worse things, right? It's not a bad way to spend your time when you're trying to be out there and serve and help people. You know what I'm saying? But so he's a good guy. But he sent me a thing this week where his fire department was honoring the fallen heroes of 9/11. And the firefighters and first responders that responded to 9/11 are absolutely heroes. However, I responded to him saying, you know how I honor those men? I honor those men by getting their message out, which is the message of the truth. And that is that 9/11 was an inside job. There was 118 firefighters and first responders who were silenced by the court systems because they were trying to get out their message. And all 118 of those firefighters and first responders reported secondary explosions going off all through those buildings. That means it was not a plane that brought those buildings down. It was controlled demolition. And if you know anything about professional demolition, when you have a structure that big that falls completely straight down on what's called its own footprint, it's physically impossible under the laws of physics for that to take place unless it was professionally wired to come down in that manner. Otherwise, it would have fallen and hit other buildings. And even pieces, maybe multiple directions. It might have, a top might have been weakened and it fell like this, and now it's hitting multiple buildings. But the problem with that is then you don't get the payout on the insurance. And Larry Silverstein, who came and bought those buildings, which is really odd. I just did a show on this a few episodes back. What's really odd is that people don't realize the Twin Towers were condemned. They were condemned before the attack. Why? Because they were filled with asbestos. And the only safe way to remove it is if you brought those towers safely down and rebuilt them from scratch. The problem is that's not cost effective to anyone. So even though they were condemned and for sale, no one was buying the Twin Towers until Larry Silverstein comes along. Not only does he buy it, but 6 months prior, he changes the insurance to make sure it covered terrorist attack. I'm sure that's just a coinky dink. In law enforcement, there's no such thing as a coincidence. When you do investigations and police investigations, detective work, there's no such thing as coincidence. You look for patterns. All right? He got a giant payout on those buildings only because they fell straight in their own footprint and didn't hit other buildings, which he would have had to then pay for. It was all corruption. It was all scam. All right? Now, I tried to put a video on here, but it was too big. I tried it several times. I couldn't get it to work. I apologize. Look, try to record this picture right here. Take a snapshot of it or come back to it, make a note of it, write it down. This is on the show Redacted, which is a fantastic show. They bring in a professional pilot and that has direct experience with the 9/11, and they interview him on how it's absolutely impossible for the government's bullshit story to be true, and he picks it apart, and he does a great job of doing so. The gist of it is that those planes weren't hijacked at all. Now, they had remote control systems that were hijacked. So government agencies were able to basically take over the control of those planes remotely and flew them into the towers. Okay. And I will argue, in my theory from studying all this stuff, which is more so than anyone else I know, doesn't mean that there's not people that know more than I do, but I don't know anyone personally who's studied this more than I do to the depth I've had. I believe that Building 7 was the staging point where all this was staged to happen and take place from being controlled. The remote control of those planes into those towers took place in Building 7. Then they exited after the job was done, and then they imploded Building 7 to destroy the evidence. And $7 billion worth of gold disappeared that was being held at the bottom of the building as well. And we don't ever hear anything about that. It just disappeared. Imagine that. But I think that was a coordinated station that oversaw the mission of the false flag attack. And then they covered their tracks by destroying the building. All right. Another thing on that, look up Operation Northwoods. Operation Northwoods was a U.S. government plan in the Bay of Pigs invasion that was given to John F. Kennedy, where the U.S. government said, hey, we have an idea. We're going to hijack airliners and fly them into buildings as an excuse to get us to go to war. And JF Kennedy said, no, I'm not going to do that. That's evil, but that's the blueprint for what they did a few years later for 9/11. By the way, remember the old television show X-Files? Do you know that there was a spin-off of X-Files for a short time? What was that called? The Four Horsemen, I think it was called. It's been a while. Anyway, you remember the nerdy guys that Mulder would go to they were like the conspiracy buffs, and he would go to these guys, and they became known, I believe, as the Four Horsemen, and they did a spinoff on there. on one of their first episodes, they did a show about an airline plane being hijacked and flown into the World Trade Center. They removed that TV series from the air. I bet so. And again, if you check out Aaron Russo passed away of cancer, all right? He had a friendship with Nick Rockefeller, and Nick Rockefeller told him about 9/11 was going to take place, that we were going to do as a false flag 6 months before it actually took place. And he went public with that story before he died. So look at the story of Aaron Russo talking about his relationship with Nick Rockefeller and telling him, warning about 9/11, and not just 9/11, but how they were going to use that to create a one world government where there would be everyone would have an implanted microchip that would have a 3-class system. The elites, police, enforcement, military class, which you always have to have, and then the slaves. And he was like, man, in this system, hey, if an elite wanted to rape you, your wife, or your children, you could do nothing about it because you're in the slave class or even the law enforcement class. The elites could, they could just be like, and do whatever they want and get away with it. That's what Nick Rockefeller was explaining to Aaron Russo. Go look that up. And also look at what it said about, Federal Reserve. That's also interesting. He does a video that he did before his death where he talks about all that. It's worth taking a gander. All right. But anyway, come back and record this, take a look at it, snapshot it, whatever. Go look up this video on YouTube. Please take a watch. It's very informative. It's one of the best videos I've seen on the topic. A friend of mine sent it to me this week. I was blown away. I went back and thanked him like 3 or 4 times. It was a fantastic video. They does a very fantastic job, and it's new information. I knew a lot of the information already. It's not all new information, but the way they present it is in a way that most people haven't heard before, and it's from professionals. So please go take a look at it. Something else I wanted to bring up is this man. This man is General Albert Stubblebine. That's a tongue twister there. Anyway, he was in charge of U.S. Army intelligence. All right, and this man is a highly, highly respected and famous general. Okay, I point that out because this is what he had to say about the Pentagon. 9/11. I saw a missile hitting the Pentagon, not a plane. All of the sensors were turned off that day. Yeah. Now there's multiple redundant systems so that if one goes down, you have a backup. If that goes down, you have a backup. If that goes down, you have a backup. Including, that's not just the sensor systems, but there's also, most people don't know, there's gun ships on top of the Pentagon. And what are they there for? In the event that a plane goes rogue and wants to land there, or a missile, these gunships on top of the Pentagon can target those things, and they work independent. So if one does go down, because technology always does something wrong, another system backs that up, and another system, it's like at least 5 that back each other up. Okay, they were all taken down on that day. On that day, they were all taken down, as well as other sensors. That's not a coincidence. That is a conspiracy. The sensors were turned off that day. One apparently did not turn off, and it shows this object hits the Pentagon. It did not look like an airplane. I've seen that footage. It absolutely did not look like an airplane. It looked like a missile. And I can tell you one reason why. Planes don't fly like this off the ground at a perfect horizontal level. They don't do that. The planes are either going up or they're coming down. A lot of my friends are pilots. All right. This missile that you see in the footage, which they say is a plane, it's not. You see an object flying at a complete horizontal path off the ground till it strikes. That's a missile. In fact, one thing they talk about in the video, something I already knew, is if you talk to pilots, they do the flight. We know the exact flight trajectory because of radar. If they try to follow that in simulators and plane simulators, They crash and burn every single time. It's impossible for a pilot to make the flight path that they're saying that these Muslims came over and who had like that much plane experience flying a single engine Cessna, and all of a sudden they're saying they have the competence to fly that in a 747 commercial airliner, or something to that degree. It's impossible. It doesn't make sense. If you actually study the stuff with an open mind, it does not make sense. But going back to what he said, at each floor, successive poofs of smoke are seen, squibs. All right, now he's talking about 9/11. This is something I talked about in my video two episodes back on 9/11. If in professional demolition, you look at a building, you will see pss, 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 from top to bottom. These are called squib loads. And it's a 90-degree poof of smoke that shoots out against the building, away from the building. Here, 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 here. What that is those are charges, usually thermate or thermite, that are placed on the steel beams that slice through that like a hot knife through warm butter. All right. And that's what brings down the support beams that enables the building then to collapse. Those squib loads that you see in the videos, and something I pointed out, I tried to find video footage when I did my episode on 9/11 to show video footage of those squib loads. I could not find it. They have been removed. A lot of stuff, unfortunately, has been removed by AI from online, and it's hard to find. I did find photographs of it, and I used that in my video to show those squib loads of photographs, the smoke coming out just like this. On some of them in the old video, when it came out, molten steel would then pour out the side of the building below it, right here. That's the support beams that has been liquefied by the thermate or thermite. And you can actually see it pouring out of that hole it made when it exploded, when that squib load exploded out the building. This is absolute physical proof that those buildings were brought down in controlled demolitions. Not only that, since I'm on the topic, I'll also rehash from my old video. They had bomb-sniffing dogs, 6 for each tower, that went through those towers every day, because years back there was an incident with a van filled with bombs in one of the parking garages. So they started using bomb-sniffing dogs. These bomb-sniffing dogs were called off 2 weeks prior to the event. We're not allowed to enter the building. Gee, I wonder if that's a coincidence. You ask any professional demolition expert, how long would it take to reasonably wire a building like this working as fast as you can? And they say, oh, that would take 2 weeks. Oh, imagine that. I'm sure it's just another coincidence. Now, also, there's a third Bush brother, not just Bush Jr. and Jeb of Florida, but there's a third one. What was his job? He was a security guard at the Twin Towers, and he quit the day before 9/11. I'm sure that's just a coincidence, right? Yeah, I got some bridges to sell you. At each floor, subsequent puffs of smoke are seen, squibs. That's what they're called in professional demolition. All the way down, those puffs of smoke are due to controlled demolitions. The collapse of the Twin Towers were caused by controlled demolitions. Former head of Army Intelligence, Major General Stubblebine, an American hero and patriot. All right, switching gears. Sip of water. We just had Friday the 13th yesterday. Ooh, scary. Halloween's coming. Now, one thing that's interesting is, there's different theories on this, but one of the leading theories that I've learned in my studies, especially in theology and stuff, is this. One of the claims of where the term Friday the 13th came from and why it's a bad day is because of this. Boom, booyakasha. This is a image of the famous Knights Templars. All right. A lot of people have heard the term Knights Templars. Okay. The Knights Templar was a religious Catholic order of monks. However, they were different than any other Catholic religious order in the world, or history for that matter, because they were actually militant. They were soldiers. They were professional soldiers and religious monks. So it was a Catholic institution of religious monks, soldier, warriors. All right. And they had a reputation for being total badasses. They made a deal. They fought during the Crusades, all right, against the Persian expansion. All right. Um, and what happened is the Persians took control of the Holy Land, Jerusalem, where of course everyone's still fighting over Gaza and the where the Dome of the Rock and the Wailing Wall and all that right there. Okay, so in the ancient city of Jerusalem, the old city of Jerusalem. So what happened is these Knights Templar soldier monks, they asked the Pope for special permission to be able to guide pilgrims into the roads leading into make pilgrimages into the ancient city of Jerusalem. All right, during the war, during the conflict, during the Crusades, and the Pope granted them this special access, favor, whatever permission. They were known for being really tough. They were known that if you had like 5 of these guys, it was worth having them. They could hold their own against a much larger force of Persians or whoever. All right. Now, another consequence of this, they had a reputation of just being like highly trained professional. Like you just don't want to mess with these guys. A lot of times, nobility, which is interesting. Like say you came from a famous household with a famous name, the king's house or something, the firstborn gets all of the title, nobility, money, possessions, all that stuff. The secondborn, even though they have the name from the family, they don't get crap that the first doesn't give them. So a lot of times the secondborn, it was seen as an honorable way to spend your life since you were poor, even though you had the big name. Would be to go join something like the Knights Templars, where you would have like prestige and a name, like you're with the Special Forces, you're with the Navy SEALs, you're with Delta Force, you're a tier 1 contractor, operator, you know what I mean? It's prestige, all that kind of stuff. So that was they had a lot of big names and clout and power also because and a lot of donations because of that. It made them a step above. They had the best of everything, especially when it came to weapons and training, and that makes a difference on the battlefield. And not to mention, you had gifted people that had lots of experience in strategy and war and stuff like that. So that all played out. It was almost like creating a dream team. You know what I'm saying? So, but anyway, another thing that came out of this time was. And it's funny. I just bought the rule for the order. Like when you join a religious order, you have what's called a rule, and it was one of my favorite saints, Saint Bernard of Clairvaux. He actually wrote the rule for the Knights Templars, and I just got a copy of it. I'm not sure. I was cleaning this weekend, and I don't know where I put it. That's what happens when I clean. That's why he cleaned it. Anyway, so. But that I thought that was interesting too. But another thing that was very interesting about the Knights Templar is they essentially invented the modern form of banking. Okay, they invented the modern form of banking because when they were taking dignitaries and people that could pay big sums of money to have their services to guard them into the trails into the Holy Lands during the Crusades, right? For protection. Well, they said this. They said, "Hey, I tell you what, if we get robbed and someone takes all your gold, you're out of luck. But I tell you what, we'll take this little piece of paper and we'll hold your gold for you, and we'll write you a little promissory note. So you just keep this little piece of paper with you. Then after you get back, give us this note, and for a small fee, usury, we will then give you your gold back, and then your gold is safe." Well, they became goldsmiths, and they developed a gold treasury as a result of that, and they essentially invented modern form of banking. All right. Now that reconnects later in the story. All right. That's an important part. Well, The order grew strong, and there were some allegations that the order was doing some crazy stuff, including allegations of occult rituals. There's a lot of secrecy around like the initiation rites, and and because of that secrecy, some claim that there were abuses going on because you couldn't just go out and talk about it. All right. You couldn't just go whistleblow it. So there were people that went out and talked about it, and it caused a lot of controversy. They said, "Hey, man, these guys are doing some crazy stuff back here in these secret little rituals." All right. Another thing that came to light is they were telling the Pope that they wanted to safeguard people entering the trails to the Holy Land, but they were using that as an excuse and a cover so that they could secretly dig and do excavations underneath King Solomon's temple, or the remains of what was left of it. They believed that there was still buried treasure worth a lot underneath that temple, and they wanted access to it before any other looters or anyone else got to it while it was still somewhat fresh, all right, so to speak, in excavations underneath it, all right, all the surface stuff had already been, plummeted. But also, there's also claims that not just artifacts and riches, golds, whatever, the stuff that Goonies would be jealous of. Sorry. Um, but but also secret knowledge of that was used by King Solomon to build the temples, secret math, if you will, secret numerology and stuff like this. You see what I'm saying? There was a lot of that was claimed too. Well, then you had the governor, you had the King of France. The King of France owed the Knights Templar for their services a whole lot of monies. Well, the king decided he didn't want to pay him back because he owed too much, and you're not a king very long if you can't fund your army. All right, and now he's got to fund these guys more than his army, or didn't leave enough left for him to feel safe with his army. So put him in a little bit of a bind. So he's like, I got an idea. I'll just turn the Pope against the Knights Templar instead of me having to pay them back. All right. So the King of France went to the Pope with all these accusations of the occult rituals, of secrecy, of actually, using a cover of the Holy Land to do excavations underneath the King Solomon's temple, et cetera, et cetera. Well, he was able to convince the Pope at the time enough that he felt that there might be some credibility to this. Now, where the truth is on that, history only knows. However, I believe this is only my own personal theory. I believe some of that, I think there was some credibility to, how they say money is power, right? And they say power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. You know what I'm saying? When you have, I can tell you from experience in religious life and having been in religious orders many times, I've been in a bunch of religious orders actually, more so than most. But that said, money and power is really kind of like very bad in religious communities. Most religious communities takes vows of poverty, and that's because in poverty they stay humble. All right, it's a safeguard, if you will. These Knights Templar grew very powerful and strong, almost like their own country or army. You know what I'm saying? They became a force to be reckoned with, and along with that, and especially from a monetary standpoint, tends to come corruption. Corruption tends to follow that. So, and being there was so much secrecy in their oaths and stuff like that, it could have been rife with abuse. So, and I do believe that they were excavating and looking for not just treasure, but secret knowledge and stuff like that they intended to use for their advantage. So, I do believe there was some credibility to that. Now, how much? I don't know. How much was it just the King of France trying to get out of paying his debt? I'm sure there was a part of that in it too. There probably aren't, any squeaky clean sides, but nonetheless, the Pope felt that it was enough of a threat that he was going to then disband the Knights Templar, warrior, monk, soldier, special forces, for lack of a better word, because they absolutely were. they were definitely the special forces of the day. All right. They were badasses, to say the least. All right. And they were hardened guys. All right. In battle, everything else, experience, blah, blah, blah. So now the Pope has a problem. If he decides that they're now, they went from an asset to a threat, imagine how often that tends to happen, right? Just ask Saddam Hussein, ask Gaddafi, ask Osama bin Laden, how fast you can turn from an asset working with the U.S. to, oh, now I'm the enemy. I just heard it on Fox News. Yeah, right. Anyway, so the Pope had a problem. How are you going to disband this super powerful and rich, influential, and very strong order? Well, the Pope was smart. He decided, if I'm going to try to disband or attack these guys, we need to attack them all at once. So he came up with this giant operation to target all their houses of formation, of their headquarters, all this stuff, all and attack all at the same time on the same day. And that day became infamously known as Friday the 13th, and became known as why that is a very, very unlucky day. So all these houses were attacked by you got to understand, the Pope today is like a political figurehead in many ways, and a spiritual, supposed to be a spiritual one too, not Francis. But back in the day, popes, had armies and were rulers like kings, and had massive armies. I mean, look what they mustered for the Crusades. That was calling armies from all over the world, kind of thing, all the West. So to stop the expansion of Persia at the time. So the Pope wielded enormous power, authority, and military force at that time, not like today. And I think it's better that the Pope doesn't have that. Although we're currently having another Muslim expansion across that's attacking the West as a weapon and a tool right now. And instead of the Pope uniting the world against this in a militant force to stop this, he's welcoming them in and telling us, oh, don't worry, allow the wolves to enter the hen house with your wife and your children. It's all going to be okay. Yeah, even though these people are saying that, they're here to kill you. All right. In fact, do I have another one of my quotes? Holy cow, it just doesn't let me put enough quotes on here, I tell you. Okay, let me see if I can find this quote. I had it, another one I wanted to add. Oh, I'll pull up my list. I'm gonna have to read it to you if I can find it. Doo-ba-doo-ba-doo. Where are you? Do. And I'm not seeing it, although I know I had it ready to go. Doggone it. Anyway, it's found it. I can't put it up on the screen, but I can read it to you. Imam is like a Muslim religious leader, like we would have a bishop or something like that, right? It's a leader of a higher level leader. Imams tell Muslim migrants to breed children with Europeans. That means anyone in the West, so that includes us, to conquer their countries, and vows we will trample them underfoot. All right, you understand this? You understand the significance of what I just read? That means that the Islamic world is telling their people to come to the Western countries and not only do physical attacks, but also to outbreed us, because Western civilization, we tend to have 1.5 children on average. All right, if you can do the math on that. Whereas these Muslims have 6 to 9 children per family and multiple wives at that. So they come here and get on our welfare system, and they can have 4 wives and all have 6 or more kids from one person. Whereas in Europe and in the US, you're lucky to have maybe 2 kids. Some of the biggest maybe have 3. You know what I mean? And with one wife. And yet our healthcare system is paying for all those kids and all those wives for one man. All right. Now imagine all the other men. You see what I'm saying? They're talking about outbreeding us. Not to mention, if you look at some of the Western countries and areas, the demographics with these Muslims coming in have taken over. There's parts of England that will forever become Muslim now. There are parts of Sweden and the Netherlands and Germany where their demographics of their nation have changed forever. Well, they're having so many Muslim children and Muslim babies, and the governments are putting out ads saying, don't be racist like your evil parents. Show you're a good citizen and go have sex with these migrant immigrants and have their babies. I mean, they're actually using propaganda of this in the cultures in these countries. I've seen tons of it. You don't see it here in the US as nearly as much, but I've seen tons of, they even had schools where they were putting out workbooks talking about how the whites have to learn to be cucks, meaning that you just have to accept that you're going to have these Muslim men that are going to come and rape your wife and your children, and you have to raise their babies. And under law, you're going to be required for raising their babies, even though you're not the parent, and that this is a norm you have to accept. This is like it's crazy, some of the stuff that's going on. We don't hear about a lot of this in the news in the West, but it's insanity levels. Insanity levels. I'll give you another example. There are parts in Europe where the government will come in and say, hey, we're kicking you and your family out of your house. Doesn't matter how many generations you've lived here. We're gonna let the migrants, usually Muslims, come stay here. Okay. And that just flat out happens in a lot of places. But in some places, they actually give you a choice. They say, now look, I tell you what, we're willing to work with you. We'll kick you out of your house unless you take in a Muslim family. But if you take in that Muslim family, you have to support them. You have to pay for them, for their medical needs, for their food needs, for their schooling, for all this kind of stuff. You're responsible for that. But at least you get to stay in your home with your family. Now it's a trap. It's a trap. Because what happens is the family says, well, it's either we get kicked out and we lose our home for our whole family, or we take in this Muslim family. So, and they're told, oh, you're doing your part for bitten country and being neighborly, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it's a weapon used against you. All right. So they take these people in. The problem is it's not long before the very aggressive male Muslim husband starts taking sexual conjugal rights to your wife and then to your children. And you can't do anything about it. And the government, they're not going to do nothing to help you. Now what? Now your family is their family and subjected by force. That's how it works. Here's other stories. You have a guy in England, his daughter, who, sometimes young hormonal women don't make the best choices. Men either. But the point is, sometimes when you have young children and they're hitting that hormonal age, they're thinking more hormonally than they're thinking logically or with, real brains or any kind of sense. So you have them being brainwashed in schools and by their cultures that they've got to be so welcome into these Muslims. So they'll dress like, trash and go down to very sexually provocative is what I'm trying to say. And they'll go down to these migrant centers. And next thing you know, they come home with a Muslim boyfriend. Well, I can't tell you how many stories I've come across where the girl comes home with her little migrant boyfriend. Well, daddy, he doesn't like this. He gets mad. Well, two things happen. Number one, little girl says, Dad, I'm going to report you to the police for hate crimes because you can't be that way towards immigrants. And then the dad cowers because he knows he'll go to jail. That's no joke. Number two, these boys are very aggressive. And he'll come back with his friends, like 9 of them. And he'll beat the crap out of that father. And he'll say, look, your girl, your daughter, even though she's underage, is now our sexual toy for our pleasure, and we're going to come over here whenever we want, and we're going to pass her around to whoever we want of all of our friends until we get her knocked up several times to have our children. And that happens over and over and over. And they just beat the man to submission. And you can't go to the police because they're not going to do anything. They're not going to protect you. You try to do something and get in a fight with that Muslim, you're going to go to jail. They're going to be there with your daughter. That's how it works. That's evil. That's evil. So we're in a time where our governments are pushing the agenda of the weaponized replacement migration over the protection of its own citizens. That's what the topic is about tonight. And it's at an emergency level. And if people don't wake up to understand that our governments are evil and they're doing this as an agenda to do away with us. If you look on the UN's webpage, they have a page called Replacement Migration. I call it weaponized replacement migration, where they're flooding all the Western countries with all these minorities, mostly military age men. Many times they call them children, but they're not children. They're military aged men. All right. Can't tell you how many stories there are, like these sympathetic snowflake people are like, oh, we're going to take an immigrant into our house. And they soon regret it when they catch that immigrant raping their wife and their kids. You know? I mean, what are you going to do? So back to the Knights Templar. So the Pope at the time, and I don't have the, I didn't go back and get the name of who he was. You can look it up if you want to know more. He attacked all these Knights Templars at the same time, all at once on the infamous Friday the 13th. And it's a claim that that's where the infamous Friday the 13th came from. They were able to capture the head of the order of the Knights Templar, and they tortured him in the Inquisition, which I think is very wrong. I don't think anyone should ever be tortured. And I think that the Catholic Church, as much as I love the Catholicism, I think it was an error and wrong for the Inquisition and them torturing, et cetera, et cetera. I think that was going way too far and should not have ever taken place. Anyway, that said, I don't believe in torture anybody, even how bad you are. And that said, so you remember in Star Wars, remember Order 66, and where the Emperor executed Order 66, and the stormtroopers turned and started killing all the Jedi, and mostly surprise attacks, and did it all at once, all at the same time, like just try to get rid of as many of them as they could, you know. And there are a few little survivors, a few stragglers. Well, this Knights Templar attack by the Pope at the time against the Knights Templar literally was executing Order 66. That's exactly what took place. That's exactly what happened. Now, just like in executing Order 66 in Star Wars, there were some stragglers. There were some survivors. And those survivors, when they got word of what was going on, what happened with Obi-Wan and Yoda, when they found out what was going on, they went underground. They went in exile. They went into hiding. Well, the survivors of the Knights Templar, that's what they did. They went underground. They went into hiding. They went into survival mode, and they went underground. Now, consequently enough, when I was with one religious community one time, I had met a man who was a historian from Scotland. And I got into a fascinating conversation with him, and it turned out he told me of this story. He was studying texts and documents in the Parliament of the Scottish Parliament in Scotland, and he came across information that's not known to the public. And he explained this to me. Do you remember the movie Braveheart? Of course. I mean, there was a time, every single person had Braveheart on their shelf when like DVDs were becoming popular. That was like the first go-to was Braveheart, right? Everyone had Braveheart. Do you remember in the movie Braveheart, the very last battle in Braveheart was with William Wallace was killed He'd been killed, and then finally, Robert the Bruce finally led the charge against the British at overwhelming odds. They were outnumbered. The Scots were way outnumbered. By the way, I'm Scottish. I fell and busted my butt this weekend getting ready for the hurricane. But I'm Scottish. I got freckles, pale skin, and freckles. And I used to have red hair, but my red hair turned white. I used to have black hair and a red beard. It was kind of cool. But yeah, all my red turned white. So and all my black just faded away. So anyway, thank you. That said though, so and I'm losing my train of thought. Nice time for a sip of water. Hold on. All right. So they went underground. So Braveheart, Robert the Bruce, at the end of that movie, he led this battle against the British to win the final independence of Scotland from England. Yeah, right. Now in this battle, all right, they won that battle, and that's depicted at the very last scene of the movie Braveheart, and that's a true story. Any movie is loosely based on a true story, but like the beginning of that film says, hey man, stories are written by those who win, so they can write it any way they want, any bent they want, history's not always history, but you get a general sense and idea, and multiple sources definitely helps. But anyway, so that last battle is depicted. Well, this historian that I met that dug through the documents at the Scottish Parliament said in that battle depicted at the end of Braveheart with Robert the Bruce, all right, who was the leader of Scotland at that time. In that battle, I come from the Bell clan of Scotland, which wasn't a Highland clan, it was a Lowland clan, but it married into, it's called a steppe a lot of times because it married into other Highland clans like the Douglases, the Campbells, the Macmillans, all right? But they were a low-level clan, and they were part of the Reavers, but I won't go into all that right now. That Josh Whedon turned my family into nightmare monsters and Firefly. And if I ever see him, I'm having a conversation about that. But anyway, in the Josh Whedon's Firefly, which I love Firefly, his television series, the movie Serenity that came later. The big bad guys were these people that went deep into space and became kind of like zombie cannibal monsters, and they were called the Reavers. Well, the Bell clan in Scotland, as a lowland clan, was a part of 12 families that made up the Devil's Dozen, known as the Reavers, because they would raid other borderlands constantly. They got warnings from the king for fighting too much, and they needed to calm down and keep more peace. Anyway, back to the original story. So this historian I met, who read through the documents of the Scottish Parliament, said that he found records that there were mercenary soldiers that helped fight alongside the Scots in that battle with Robert the Bruce to win the independence of Scotland from England, even though they had overwhelming forces. And he said the depiction of the armament and the banners and the insignia on these mercenary knights that were in that battle were no less than the Knights Templar. So the Knights Templar re-emerged on the scene in Scotland in a divisive turning point to help win this battle with Robert the Bruce, and for Scotland to win its independence on paper from England. Okay. Now, that said, consequently enough, that's also in Scotland where the first rite of the Masonic order was ever invented and created. Not a coincidence. So basically what I'm saying in a nutshell is the Knights Templar that were Catholic warrior monks that served the Catholic Church, when they were betrayed by the Catholic Church, they went underground for safety. After some time went by, they reemerged, and this isn't common knowledge, but I knew an historian that had access to this. They reemerged in Scotland with Robert the Bruce in the battle against the English, which they won, even though they were outnumbered. All right. And they went on, the Knights Templar went on, they couldn't call themselves the Knights Templar anymore. And they weren't they weren't warriors as much anymore. They converted into what they knew of the banking side that they had already established. And they went from being the warrior monks to the Freemasons. And that's how I claim the Freemasons were invented in the world. And as a result of being betrayed by the Catholic Church, right or wrong, they vowed that one of their primary missions was to destroy the Catholic Church. In fact, years later, the Freemasons in St. Peter's Square, that's at the Vatican, in 1917, so some years later, were doing a protest in front of the Vatican in all their regalia with their aprons and all that kind of stuff, and holding up signs. And they were holding up signs that said this and chanted this: Satan must reign in the Vatican. The Pope will be his slave. Satan must reign in the Vatican, and the Pope will be his slave. Now, what's interesting is this is a very famous monk and saint. He's not known as much as he should be. He's one of the greatest saints in the Catholic Church, and his name is Saint Maximilian Kolbe. He was of Poland. He was from Poland. He was Polish. And he was a Franciscan friar, and he was an amazing person. Amazing. He built a religious order called the Neopocolana that became so largest religious order in the world, that even though it was all run by monks, it was so big it had to have its own fire department, its own lumber mill, and its own airport, because it was so big, all run by monks. It was the biggest. It basically built a city that was all run by monks. And the Nazis came in and they destroyed it all in one day. One day. Everything that this man, trying to get my fingers, there we go. Everything this man built with his life, building a city of monks, Neopocolana it was called. The Nazis came in and destroyed it in one single day. And then he was placed into Auschwitz. He was placed into Auschwitz. And in Auschwitz, in Auschwitz, if anyone ever tried to escape, there was a standing rule that they would kill 10 other inmates. All right. So it was trying to prevent you from escaping, and to get people to snitch on you if they found out you were escaping, because that meant 10 other people are going to die if they found out. And eventually, of course, they're going to find out. So one person had tried to escape. So the guards chose 10 people to execute as a result, just at random. Well, one man was standing next to St. Maximilian Kolbe right here. And that man started crying because the man said, I have a wife, I have children, and I don't want to, they still need me. I don't want to leave them. And so this man stood up and said he would take the place of that man. And he told the guard, he says, I'm a Catholic priest. And hey, that's a sure ticket to death. Communists hate Catholics. They hate Christians. They hate priests, especially if you're a good one. And there are good ones. If they're bad ones, they're definitely good ones. Jesus started them. That wasn't so that they're all evil. Even though there are evil ones among them, that's why we got the example of Judas. So Jesus could say even the chosen that he chose to be his priest, some would turn to evil. And we see that today more than ever. But most are good. They're still good holy ones. And this was one of them. This was a great, great man. And so he gave his life to sacrifice his life to save the life of this other man. And that man eventually won his freedom after Germany fell in the war and returned to his wife and children, all because St. Maximilian Kolbe saved his life. St. Maximilian Kolbe was also known when he was in Auschwitz that he would often give his food to other people to eat. Now, keep in mind, they didn't get much food and you had to do labor. So calories was a big, big deal. People would kill you over your little bowl of soup. That was the only scrap you might have gotten in a day. Well, a lot of times Maximilian Kolbe offered up his food to other people that he felt needed it more than him. And he would also try to console people when they're in their hardest parts of suffering in Auschwitz, losing hope. He would try to keep them to keep their hope and to keep their trust and faith in God, and that this would be a temporary thing, and getting to heaven is the most important thing. And then not even what happened to us in this life, not even losing our lives, but where we go, that this life is over in the blink of an eye and eternity's forever. So that we need to be focused on getting to heaven and getting to be with Jesus for eternity, and not as concerned as what happens, even the evil that happens here. Now, we have to keep our eyes fixed on hope and trust in God. And that's what's most important. And to love each other and to treat each other with love. When they took him in, they took him in a group of people, and they decided to give them not lethal injections. They decided to starve them. Remember, they were already starved. So starving them is not that hard. It wasn't long before their bodies would shut down and they would die of hunger, which is very painful from what I've been told. After 2 weeks, everyone had died except for St. Maximilian Kolbe. He was still alive. And so they finally gave him a lethal injection to finish him off, and that did the trick. My mom and my stepfather traveled to Auschwitz. My stepfather was first generation from Poland, from Krakow. And my stepfather and my mom went to Auschwitz, and they stood in the cell where St. Maximilian Kolbe right here was put to death and executed to save that other man's life. So very grateful to him and to other men like him. So here, the reason I'm talking about St. Maximilian Kolbe is he was standing in the square this day, and he witnessed this event take down, and he made a record of it for history's preservation, that the Freemasons were making this promise that Satan was going to reign in the Vatican. All right. That means, and this saint recorded that, and here's an excerpt of that. All right. That means that their goal was that they were going to compromise the Pope and take over from within in order to put a globalist, communist, Freemason in the place of the Pope and call himself Pope, where he would not lead the church according to the teachings or traditions of the church, but he would lead the church through Marxism, through communism, through the globalist agenda, like the Green Movement and open borders and all this kind of stuff. This Pope says if you're not a Christian if you own a gun. That's funny because he has a whole army next to him that protect him everywhere he goes. Why don't you give that up, Mr. Double Standards? All right. Here he's seen with Nancy Pelosi giving Freemasonic handshakes. All right. And then not just does the handshake, but he holds the handshake for several minutes for a room of reporters to take photographs of it. I wonder why they do that. They do that because in the occult, they believe that this gives them power. They believe it gives them authority. That's why in Hollywood, you see all these sold out demon souls doing these numbers all the time. These are all people that have given up their souls. And you see it more and more in Hollywood. Not to mention, you see more and more in Hollywood how people are becoming just straight out celebrities, becoming more and more demonic. Look at Taylor Swift. I went to the store the other day. There were 5 magazine covers with this woman on it. The woman's doing full out witchcraft ceremonies at her concerts now for little children. This woman is telling children that you can be Christian and support abortion. That is false. She is not a theologian, and she doesn't know anything about Christianity. Christianity is not what you just wanted to feel it to be. It's what it is, and it specifically says that the murder of innocent is murder and evil, and will send you to hell. The Bible is clear on these things. You can't just because you feel different and say, well, this is my version of Christianity. That's not how it works. That's why we have theologians that tell you you're wrong. That's not what the Bible teaches. They're like, but God's a loving God. God is a loving God. But you know what you have to have for love? You have to have justice. There's no such thing as love without justice. People want the feel-good, snowflakey love side as a word, but it's misused. It's a lie. You cannot have love without justice. Cannot. And justice for killing the innocent children of God is not justice. It's satanic. And what does Satan do? He lies. He tries to say, oh, you can be Christian and pro-abortion. No, you cannot. Now, since we're on the topic of Mason, I wanted to cover this before. This is Albert Pike, a very famous god, if you will, of Freemasonry. And he came out and said in his book of Morals and Dogma, which I have a copy of, and for those that tell me no, I disagree. He says that that in Freemasonry, they actually worship Lucifer, especially, he even says that the low levels don't know, but the high levels know. They are servants and worship Lucifer, all right, as Satan. I mean, they call him Lucifer, it's Satan, all right? He wrote this in a book that he wrote, authored, called Morals and Dogma. Now, I've had friends of mine that are like, John, that's not true. I've got a copy of that book, and it's not in it. They've re-edited the book for modern times. You have to get an older copy of the book, which I have, and I meant to throw up pictures on here, but I couldn't add all my pictures. So I have the older book, and it says in the book exactly what this says, that yes, they serve and worship Lucifer and the Freemasons. Now remember, this started from a religious Catholic order. The religious Catholic order turned on them. So what did they do? They turned to the devil, which it was already argued that they were doing that even prior to that, they were already doing a cult. They wanted power, and they found rituals for cult worship from King Solomon. And so they corrupted them, and they started getting involved in the occult. And so they started serving Lucifer instead of Jesus. And that's one of the reasons why the Pope was convinced they had to be destroyed and removed as an order from the Catholic Church. All right. Now, here's something really important too. And I'm gonna swing back to this real quick, because here's something. According to Albert Pike, it was the Freemasons and the Illuminati that created the First World War on purpose for their agenda. They created the Second World War on purpose for their agenda. And they talked about creating a Third World War on purpose to serve their agenda. And what is that agenda? It's the Great Reset. The Great Plan of China, the beta test. This is the actual plan now, the Great Reset. And how do they accomplish that? With World War I, with World War II, with World War III. All right. And this here, you got Albert Pike all the way back from, like, looking for a date here. It gives a page number. It's 588 in his book Morals and Dogma, where he makes that claim. I'm looking for a date. Anyway, this is back like in the late 17th century, early 1800s. He gave that they were going to have 3 world wars, all before the wars, were even going, kind of thing. I don't know, when was World War I? I don't think it was that old. So yeah, it wasn't, because you had World War II in the 40s. So anyway, they created the wars, and you can read this. It's a little bit, it's too small on my screen to have any hope of reading it, but you can screenshot it, pause it, whatever, and read it. Unfortunately, it was highlighted and makes it, instead of easier, it makes it a little harder to read. But here's something else that comes out of them. And This is talking about how they're going to change society. This is how they said they're going to make. Now, this is years and years before any of this ever happened. All right, this book was written in 1989, but they said that their goal was to legalize homosexuality and homosexual marriage, and the whole idea was because they wanted to destroy regular families and Christian families. There's a whole list of things that they intended to do here. And this is written in 1989. None of that was in play in the United States in 1989. But if you read it today, it's like that thing was written yesterday. These things have been enacted. And that's why I say it's important to go back and look at what he said about war. All right. And here he says, yeah, that's okay. They worship Lucifer. But here he says this, the Illuminati Grand Wizard, this is a direct quote. We control Islam. We control Islam, and we'll use it to destroy the West. What have we been talking about? The whole show has been talking about the UN's weaponized replacement migration, where there's a new, if you will, for lack of a better word, crusades, where the Muslim world, by their imams and by the globalists, are being used to target and attack the West and Christianity. And they believe that they've got to destroy whites and white people, because along with that, they believe goes Christianity. Okay, so both have to be destroyed. That's why every television show you see now, every commercial, every movie has to be mixed race families. Has to be. Like, it's a rule. It's a rule. There's very few exceptions to that. It's an absolute rule. They have to be mixed race families. And there's nothing wrong with the mixed race family. But when you're doing it as a rule and to target and eliminate a specific race, then that makes it evil and it makes it racist. All right? It makes it racist. In the United States, there was a white majority. They're trying to replace, they have, I pretty much believe, replace that white majority just by bringing in all these immigrants. And for our black brothers and sisters, it's just as bad for y'all, because y'all being replaced by all the immigrants too. It's not like they're gonna be welcome into you. Nope. So we're all in this together. Now, ultimately, your skin doesn't matter, because we're all the children of God, and that's how we should behave. But they want to force us into division, divide and conquer. So they want to pour the gasoline on racism and create more separation, because if we ever unified against them, they know that they would be eliminated and lose. So like people talk about the war in the Middle East and how they can't ever fix it. Dude, that's been their most successful thing they've ever done, just about. Their goal is not to bring peace. Their goal is constant war, and with everybody fighting against each other. They want to do the same thing right here. And they are. They're starting that. All right? It's divide and conquer. Divide and conquer. The oldest military strategy. Divide and conquer. The Illuminati Grand Wizard, we control Islam, and we will use it to destroy the West. In parentheses, that will be World War III. This is what we're starting to experience right now. More people would wake up if they listened to the shit Albert Pike said, quoting whoever wrote this. He was a 33rd degree Freemason who admitted that they worship Lucifer. Hard not to see Satan's work and how it has unfolded since this man's prediction. All three world wars, World War III, World War III, World War III, World War III, wake up, truth, Freemasonry. You get it. New World Order. Yep, they're behind that, and they're behind the ushering in of the Antichrist. All right, ushering in of the Antichrist, who is coming soon. Why? Why do we see this battle in Gaza going on right now? Because they want to rebuild the third temple. The third temple will be headed by the Antichrist. while his false prophet heads up the Vatican in Rome. All right. And here's something since we're on that topic, I'll tell y'all. Not a lot of people are aware of this, but in the Catholic Church, we have church approved apparitions, and some of the biggest ones are by the Blessed Mother, the Mother of Jesus, who's tried to warn the church through the years. And the church has given its stamp of approval to some of these apparitions over time. And here's one of them from La Salette, France, many years ago. I don't have a date on here, but it was like 17, 18. It was very long ago. Rome will lose the faith and become the seat of the Antichrist. Whoa, wait, what? Rome will lose the faith and become the seat of the Antichrist. That's funny. Where have we heard that before? You know, where have we heard that? The Freemasons in St. Peter's Square in 1917, Satan must reign in the Vatican and the Pope will be his slave. Sorry, couldn't help myself. Rome will lose the faith and become the seat of the Antichrist. The demons of the air, together with the Antichrist, will work great wonders on the earth and in the air, and men will become more and more perverted. God will take care of his faithful servants and men of goodwill. The gospel will be preached everywhere around the world. All peoples and all nations will have knowledge of the truth. That's an important point she made, that the gospel will be preached everywhere. Why? Because one of the signs of the end times and the start of the apocalypse has been once the gospel has been preached everywhere around the world. Gee, I wonder if we are there. Short answer, yes. That was rhetorical. Here's another. This is from Our Lady of Akita. Oh, by the way, so Our Lady of Fatima, which my friend L.A. Marzulli is not a fan of. He's made films against Fatima, but and I have the greatest respect and love for L.A. Marzulli. I think he's a good man. I think he's got a good heart, and I think he's trying to do what he believes is right. He focuses on the physical things and miracles that took place at the at Fatima. But one thing I tried to explain to him was, go beyond that and listen to the messages of what the Blessed Mother was giving. That's where the heart of the whole thing is, not in the miracles and what may have caused those or not. But listen to the messages. One of the things that the Blessed Mother said in Fatima, in France, to some children, 3 children, was that if the world did not repent, that communism was going to spread around the world in the eras of communism. And guess what? We're there. That's happened. She also warned that sadly, more people were going to hell than to heaven. And she said that brought her and her son great pain. All right. And it was a warning, including Catholic priests and bishops. They say the road to hell was paved with the miters, the hats of bishops and their bones. And you know what? I believe that's true. Catholics paving the road to hell, their bones, the bishops. They have a lot to be responsible for. And unfortunately today, many are betraying the church. All thinking they're doing the right thing in the name of being little liberal snowflakes, but no, it's wrong. Anyway, and they will come to realize this. But anyway, so Our Lady warned. Now, for those of you who are like, oh, it's not true, you can't say that more people go to hell than to heaven. Yes, you can. It's in the scripture. Go read your Bible. In the book of Matthew, Matthew says, wide is the road to perdition, and many are those who enter. Narrow is the path to paradise, and few are those who make it. That's in the book of Mark. So go look. Was that it? Say Matthew? Matthew. Go look that up. So just do a Google search, or Google's evil too. Do a Brave search. Duck go duck or whatever. Anyway, here now, Our Lady gave another message at Akita, Japan, that happened just in the 70s recently. Oh, and by the way, it was very recent, just a few weeks ago, that the young nun who was given these apparitions of the Blessed Mother just passed away just a few weeks ago. But anyway, the Blessed Mother told her this: the work of the devil will infiltrate even into the church, the Catholic Church, in such a way that one will see cardinals opposing cardinals, bishops against bishops, priests who venerate me and my son will be scorned and opposed by their confreres. Churches and altars will be sacked. The church will be full of those who accept compromises. Accept compromises. And the demon will press many priests and consecrated religious souls to leave the service of the Lord and stop being consecrated, but go and join the world instead of trying to serve God in that way. The demon will especially be against souls that are consecrated to God. And she calls for prayer for people to turn to Jesus, and for people to repent. What did John the Baptist say in his time? Repent, make straight the path of the Lord. The reed blowing in the wind. Repent, 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 make straight the path of the Lord. Because these are the wicked times in which we is living. All right. Moving on. Did I put this one up already? We shall find out. Yeah, the WEF, World Economic Forum, says compliance. Okay. Must see video. Communist dictator Lula only had 500 supporters at his parade versus Bolsonaro's 4 million. Now that's important. Bolsonaro was the popular vote. He's basically the Trump of Brazil. And the communists came in and stole the election. And here's proof that he stole the election. Bolsonaro can get supporters of over 4 million just to show up to hear him do a public address. Sound familiar? Whereas the dictator who stole the election, the communist, and he's an open communist, he can't even get 500 supporters to show up for an event. Right there, that alone shows you that it was stolen. The people want the patriot. They want the nationalist. They don't want the communist. But just to quote Stalin, it doesn't matter who votes. It matters who counts the votes. Yeah, that's why mail-in ballots are so important, especially now. Okay, Italian woman facing murder charge after running over African mugger. Okay, so here's this little old lady who gets mugged by an African illegal immigrant, but they never say that in the article, right? So she's able to escape and runs over the criminal as she's trying to get away, and because he was hurt, she's the one charged with murder. Woman is facing murder charges after running over an African mugger. See, under communism, under globalism, under communism, you are not allowed to defend yourself. You are not allowed to defend yourself. If you try to defend yourself, you will be the one who will be charged. I told you in, was it my last episode or the one before that, that there was a man in England who was having a birthday party for his 4-year-old daughter and in his backyard. And all of a sudden, a Muslim immigrant, illegal immigrant, jumps over his fence with a gun, with like an AK-47 style gun. It was with the intention of killing this man's whole family and his children on her 4-year-old birthday party. The man was able to subdue the Muslim immigrant, and he calls the police. Well, what do the police do? They ended up letting the man who was there to commit murder go free in the streets. They arrested the homeowner for defending his family from being murdered, from being slaughtered. When your government becomes that evil, that government needs to be removed in any country, including this one. They are not worthy to rule over you. or be your government anymore. And this is the point of what we're discussing tonight. Mother shoots man climbing into daughter's bedroom in Chicago. The PD confiscates her legal gun. Again, she's the one who's in excuse me, she's the one who's getting in trouble. They take her gun when all she's doing is defending her family, her children. And of course, Springfield, Ohio, residents sound alarm on Haitian illegals grabbing ducks from parks, chopping their heads off and eating them. Instead of deporting Haitians, Ohio government to roll out police state and send more cops to Springfield and more money for the migrants. Again, these people should not be allowed to rule over us. If you're not going to defend the citizens, but you're going to defend these invaders, which is the plan. This is the weaponized replacement migration. These people need to be removed from office. Ohio Election Integrity Unit discovers illegal Haitian voter registration fraud operation. Press release. Imagine that. Imagine they bust them trying to get all the illegals to vote. Yeah, whatever happened to election integrity? Don't you realize one of the reasons why the left grandizes and grandstands so much on immigration is because they manipulate them into voting for their side. For them, they're just stealing votes. That's election tampering right there alone. Of course they're fighting for it so much. It's not because they give a crap about these people. Don't let them eat us. Vote for Trump. Of course, a bunch of these memes are going around. I thought it was cute. However, this is not cute. This is a man, they discovered migrants, African migrants, barbecuing cats on grills in Ohio. That's a cat skinned on the grill that they're cooking up like a barbecue. All right, that's not funny. Can't take it anymore. Residents of Springfield, Ohio, beg for help after 20,000 Haitians overwhelm city eating local wildlife. This man's walking down the road with a duck. Appears to be a duck in his hands. So people are crying for help. Please make pets safe again. Please make pets safe again. I love this. Parents killed, baby injured in head-on collision with drunk illegal alien driving 100 miles per hour. I can tell you, as a former law enforcement officer and a state trooper, yes, when someone's driving at 100 miles an hour and you have any kind of accident, people are going to die. That's how it works. It's called physics. And it's a shame because a lot of times I worked many fatalities and the drunks tend to walk away most times, but the devastation of the families that they kill is rough. I had a drunk driver case I worked one time where a little boy was invited to ride with the LSU. LSU won today, barely by the skin of their teeth, and I almost don't think they deserved to win, but I'm glad that they did win. And I'm no fan of our coach. But that said, our guys played hard, and I think we got the win. But this little boy was invited to ride a bicycle with a bicycle LSU team, and they were riding on River Road next to the Mississippi River, and a drunk driver was coming home and swerved and ran into all the bicyclists. And unfortunately, there was a young boy that was there just as an honor, and he was at the head of the line of the bicyclists, and the drunk driver killed him. When I interviewed the drunk driver had parts of like flesh in his hair, on his shirt, and his beard. And he didn't realize that was the little boy's brains. He was wearing the little kid's brains that he just ran over. There was a tooth, a molar, lodged in the windshield of the pickup truck that he ran over the kid with. He killed a professor that was also in the front of the line, and I had to go to the professor's house, and I had to notify his wife that her husband was dead. She was pregnant. She went into labor shortly after I gave her the news that her husband, who she was getting ready to have this child with, was never going to come home again, never be a part of her life, never be a part of her child's life because of a drunk driver. I went to the hospital where they were trying to save that little boy's life, but there wasn't much left to save. Like I said, his brains were already splattered. The father comes out to me and puts his hand on my shoulder. He puts his head on my shoulder and he cries. And he says, my son never even kissed a girl before. He wasn't even old enough to have experienced life, to have ever even kissed a girl before, he said. Then he ran off. Then he came back to me 3 times, doing the exact same thing, putting his head on my shoulder and crying. And then his pastor shows up, which was a local TV evangelist at the time, in a brand new Escalade, walking around like he was some kind of top rooster and his shit don't stink, and in some fancy, expensive suit. And he puts his hand out to me like, and I was just like, yeah, dude, forget you. And I just walked off, rolled my eyes and walked off. I didn't want nothing to do with that freak. But it broke my heart, that father talking about his son and how he'll never have the opportunity to experience life because of this drunk driver. Death is tragic. It is tragic. Speaking of, look at this one. Reporter investigating invasion of Ohio City witnessed Haitian crash into a mother and child. So a reporter goes to Ohio to investigate. There's a saying in Ohio. See, the government's given these loans for these Haitians to be able to get cars. The problem is they don't know how to drive. They don't go through driving school. It's not like here where you're a kid and you go through a process and you have your parents train you. You know what I mean? Before you're adequate or safe to drive on the road by yourself. These Haitians come and get car loans and they don't know how to drive. So they're having fatalities and wrecks. And there's a running joke that if you're a reporter out there and you stand for a few minutes, you'll see one of them get into a wreck. And that's sure enough, that's what happened here. This reporter went to go and report on that, just standing there in the corner and watched one kill a mother and child. When our government gives more rights to illegal immigrants and ignores the protection and rights of its citizens, that government no longer deserves the right to rule. Remember what we read up here? This is one of the most important things ever. When government takes away citizens' right to bear arms, it becomes citizens' duty to take away government's right to govern. Well, I say it just doesn't. They're trying to take away guns just because of, like Mao Zedong said, the Communist Party has to be the only one to have guns. Because if they're the only ones that have guns, then this is what happens to us. See, there's no such thing as gun control. Gun control just means you want guns in the hands of the government. It never bodes well in history when the government is the only one who has guns. That's bad. But it goes beyond that. When our government is not protecting our citizens, but protecting these migrants to commit crimes and repeated crimes and not protecting our citizens, then they lose the right to govern. That's what I say. Parents killed Baby injured, head-on collision with drunk driver, just as we said. And again, right here, same thing. Breaking U.S. Army Northcom reports Venezuelan gangs pose major threat to America. Shooting suspects given $1,000 bond. What does that mean? That means these people were arrested in a shooting, and the courts just let them go. Let them go. Oh, promise you'll come back to stand trial. Oh yeah, oh sure, okay, yeah, thanks. Okay, see you. Bye. Can I have some money? By the way, here's something a little comical. Remember the debate with Harris the other day? A lot of people, including myself, are like, wow, I'm impressed. I've never seen this woman be able to speak coherently at this level. Because if you ever watch sound bites from her or other speeches that she's given at rallies, the woman can't talk. That's why they don't allow her to do press releases. That's why they don't allow her to do all kinds of stuff or answer questions to reporters. She sucks at it. She's not a good speaker or debater. But when we heard her go up against Trump, she actually did a really good job, even though I still, side with what Trump's saying. And she did lie about a lot of stuff, like taking guns and post-birth abortions. Absolute lies. All right. But anyway, that said, it was shown later that, oh, look at this earring that she's wearing, because it looks identical to this technology that's a speaker in your ear. So in other words, Trump was not debating Kamala Harris. Trump was debating a professional debater, and she was just repeating the words that they were speaking into her ear. Look at that. Identical. She was using an earpiece. I wouldn't expect any less. I didn't think about that, but it makes perfect sense. Now it makes sense how she was able to speak the way she did. Okay, just like we were saying about the immigrants, check this one out, because this is cray-cray. Must watch. DHS, all right, smuggles illegals in unmarked planes into San Diego. If it wasn't bad enough, our government is flying these people in from other countries. They want as many of them here as humanly possible. So much so that they're willing to pay to have complete airliners go pick them up and bring them here and drop them off in our country. All because of weaponized replacement migration. And the left feels that one of the only ways they can destroy the right is if they get all these illegals promising to vote for them, which is election interference, by the way. And that's why the topic of tonight is Red Dawn. You guys seen that movie back in 1984? It was the first PG-13 movie ever. And it came out the same weekend as the arguably first or second PG-13 movie that came out the same weekend was Gremlins by, what's that dude's name? Steven Spielberg, right? Those are the first two PG-13 movies. They both came out the same weekend, 1984. Red Dawn was about Russian and Cuban troops invading a physical force into the U.S. and a brave number of kids band together to form a resistance colony, a partisan, and is what they call them in the Russian side, to defend their country against these foreign invaders. All right. But remember what I said a little while ago about in the Crusades before, we had a pope that united the world against the Persian, arguably Muslim expansion of the world. Okay. Now we have a supposed pope who's doing the opposite. He's inviting the Muslims in to attack us, even though their imams are telling them to destroy Christians and Christian churches. Oh, speaking of, that's another article I got up here. I couldn't put it on. I'll read it. Wait, that's not the one I clicked on. Here it is. Immaculate Conception Church, a famous church, burns in France. Latest Catholic church to go up in flames. Bell tower collapses in inferno. Okay. Remember, that Notre Dame, a super famous cathedral in France, was burnt down. Well, gee, what the news wasn't saying is 900 Christian and Catholic churches were burnt down in France in that 1 year alone because of Muslim immigrants. These people are not here to assimilate. They're not here for the American dream. They're not here to get along. They're here to force you to come into their religion by force. That's what they believe. That's what they teach. And that's what they do. Let me see if I can find.
Over the weekend that is, in any terms, truly frightening. It came from a known Islamic extremist who wants to raise an army to impose Sharia law here in Australia. His message was met with raised fists and loud agreement by his followers in Lakemba. This exclusive report gives an insight into a world anti-terrorism police are urgently investigating.
They flocked to this nondescript convention centre in Western Sydney on Saturday evening. Around 200 men, another 50 women and children behind a curtain at the back, to hear speakers for extremist Muslim group Hizb ut-Tahrir call for an end to our way of life.
Eventually, we will bounce back and we will reclaim everything that they have taken from us.
Muslims attending were told Australia's democratic government has to go in favour of an Islamic caliphate ruled by Sharia law.
We will continue to stand up and to oppose your freedom to insult our messenger.
Freedom of speech was top of the agenda as firebrand preacher Bilal Murhi said Australians use freedom of speech to mock Islam, but not for long.
Now they say they are brave, they have their freedoms, yeah, because you have no state, you have no authority, you have no representation, they can be brave. But be brave when we have authority. Come forward when we have a representation with an army ready to defend the honor of Allah and His Messenger. They will not. They will not. And that's what we have to understand.
As the only journalist present, the organisers allowed me to record audio but banned cameras. Australian law says we're allowed to film public rallies.
We do have some media present here tonight, so we do strongly encourage the audience not to engage with them.
Bilal Murhi came under police investigation last October after we aired a video of him coaching children as young as 6 to chant extremist slogans. In addition to this latest speech, we've passed on several videos to the Police Counter-Terrorism Unit and the Attorney-General.
If people are engaged in the advocacy or encouragement of terrorism, they will be arrested, they will be prosecuted, and they will be taken off our streets.
Police would not comment beyond saying they are investigating. We expect to air several more videos in coming days. Brian Seymour, 7 News.
So here's the problem. It's the globalists and the powers that be in these governments and in our government that are bringing them here for this purpose. That's why when you have these Venezuelan gangs wreaking havoc on Aurora, Colorado, the government denies it's even happening. They're lying. They're denying it. They're denying what's going on in Ohio, saying, oh, it's not that bad. They're denying there's people crying for help in Aurora, and the police are doing nothing about it. So the government is saying that's not happening. That's not happening. This is America. These are people in apartment complexes with children, with families. And our government is allowing this trash that they've brought in on purpose to behave this way. The government of Colorado should be removed by force for this. Where's our military? Where's our federal government? Where are the ones that are supposed to protect our people and our citizens? When you got gangsters with automatic weapons that are terrorizing our own people, and the police do nothing. The government does nothing. The federal government, nothing. Where's the army? Where's the National Guard? The problem is our leaders are the problem. Our leaders are the ones bringing this in.
We'll grab his information and see what we can do, but there's, you know, like I said, there's
can you please collect the information? He said that he's already illegal. He already said that he went to...
Okay, hold on, let's back up a little bit. First off, we're a sanctuary city. Even if he is legal here, we cannot call ICE and report him.
But you still have to report that, right?
No, we don't, because it's a sanctuary city. We do not report illegal, undocumented.
So you're gonna let a person who went to prison, he committed a crime in America, who's illegal right now, you're gonna let him go free right now to this elevator?
That's exactly what I'm saying, because we're a sanctuary city. I've arrested a double homicide suspect in this city before and let him walk out the door because we're a sanctuary city. We're not gonna call ICE to come pick him up and deport him.
He came to pick up $320,000 from your, him, or mine grandmother and grandfather, and he's walking away freely right now, right? That's what I'm understanding right now.
I understand that, but you're asking me to call ICE or the...
I'm not asking you to call ICE. We're just asking you to take seriously that he's trying to repeat offend when he's already illegal.
He flew
repeating
from
what
New
he's
York.
already been doing.
He said, I'm in Chinatown in New York. They pay for his...
Because they're a sanctuary city, we're not going to do our job. We're not going to protect local citizens, and we let criminals go free, including for murder. The government there needs to be removed. They shouldn't have authority to be in power in Colorado, in Ohio, if they cannot protect their citizens. But the problem is, it's our government. It's our government. It's the communist globalists and our government that are behind this. They brought them here to do this. And it's going to get worse and worse if we do nothing to stop it.
It's no coincidence that 80% of the millions of illegal immigrants are military-aged men from the top.
By the way, I should give an introduction. This is Jimmy. Jimmy is a former Navy SEAL.
It's no coincidence that 80% of the millions of illegal immigrants are military-aged men from the top 20 most anti-American hostile foreign nations. When the cow stops giving you milk, you slaughter the cow. So when the government is no longer able to subsidize these millions of illegal immigrants, they will turn on you and me, but not before the government gives them free citizenship and, of course, military training in exchange for their loyalty, because nothing's for free. I mean, who else is going to join the military with the current DEI policies in place? And that's why they're considering the draft again, for a lack of enthusiasm that our young men once had to serve. So why is the government ignoring U.S. polls that show the majority of citizens want to reduce immigration and secure our border? Corrupt empires throughout history prefer using foreign mercenaries to suppress their own citizens. Regardless of the outcome of the U.S. elections, the illegal immigration crisis will be the central issue. If the current administration remains, they will offer citizenship to every illegal in exchange for military service, not only for voting power, because that's just the tip of the iceberg, but for a buying power with a mercenary force at the same time, ending any chance of conservatives ever being elected again. On the contrary, the Trump administration will attempt mass deportation of illegal immigrants, but the left will pull out all stops to prevent this. As one very well-written article states, the migrants are the keys to their kingdom. It's the only way to destroy capitalism and bring in woke socialism. Removal of illegals would set them back decades. And if the latter happens, there will be riots like we have never experienced before. So the inevitable choice comes down to riots or war. And if you don't agree with this, please save this video to reference it in about 2 years. Touch point.
Touch point. He brought up a brilliant point, and that is the globalists are not stupid. They're highly intelligent. And one of the things that they know is history and strategy. And how did Rome fall? Rome was the leader of the world of its day, took over from Greece being the leader of the world in its day, Alexander. How did Rome fall? Rome fell because of immigration. Rome fell because of immigration. I would go on to say immorality as well, a major part of Rome's decline and fall. But it all really came down to immigration. Immigration is why Rome fell. So these globalists, they know exactly what they're doing. They know exactly what they're doing. This is not a mistake. This is not an accident. This is a well orchestrated plan, and it's a satanic plan. And as I tried to, all the things I brought up tonight, they all connect together. They all connect together. And that's why I've been trying to paint this large picture. That's why this man who says that they worship Lucifer and they control the government, they've infiltrated the government, they've infiltrated most churches, they control even Islam. He said that they orchestrate all the world wars, and they're going to use these world wars and their influence of control and power. They're going to use these world wars to create their one world government. All right. Their one world government, their new world order. Okay. Which is a satanic, it's a communist socialist takeover for this globalism and globalistic idea, which is anti-American and anti-Christian, but they don't care. They even have the Christian leaders projecting this, and they're going to use this as the means to destroy our country for their great reset, to build back better. All right. That's their plan. The order rises out of chaos. That's one of their models. Their mottos. Order rises out of chaos. It's the rise of the phoenix. The phoenix, remember, burns up. It burns up, and then out of its ashes is reborn. All right. That's why the symbol that they use, even on the dollar bill, is not an eagle. If you look at it closely, it's a phoenix. It's a phoenix, and that's why it's a prophecy. Believe it or not, as I've tried to point out on other episodes before. This is a lot of information. Thank you for your patience to go through this all. I hope I've been able to do a job of coalescing a picture to bring a lot of this together. I explained some of the history, and shown how history is being used to repeat itself on purpose by now, and how they're using it to bring down our country. Be absolutely clear on this point. This is a plan to destroy our country. This is a plan to destroy our country from within and from without. How? By flooding us with the immigration that they know we can't support. That's going to topple our system. It's like if you have a life raft from a sinking ship. If you put too many people in that life raft, the life raft sinks and everyone dies. I mean, that's what's going on with immigration. We're not designed for this. And you're bringing in cultures of people that do not assimilate. They fight. And they want to turn you and your laws and your way of life into their laws and their way of life. That's their goal. And they're orchestrating the different wars also, so from within and without, as a means of destruction for our country. They are here to kill you. They are here to kill your family. And unfortunately, like in the movie Red Dawn, when people band together to support each other against the invaders, now, because of immigration, they've created this army inside, and no one's unified in fighting them off or defending our country from invaders. They're using this as a military force. Military. This is a military force. And they're going to come in here with guns, with body armor, with pistols, with force, with multiple people, and they're going to come in with UN police forces, with UN vehicles. That if you read this, and the circle in red says weapons enforcement. Why are UN military forces and vehicles being brought here that say weapons enforcement? This is a military coup against our country. And who's sounding the alarm? Almost no one. Almost no one. Where's our military? Where's our federal government? Where's our police forces? Unfortunately, they're on the wrong side of this until they find it's too late. It's too late. See, the Illuminati, the Masons, they believe in infiltration. If you can, it's like this pyramid right here. If you infiltrate any organization and you are the illuminated one that controls the top, you only are the one that has the eyes to know and see what's actually going on. But you have, because you hold the top position, you control everything below it. So the FBI, completely corrupt. Does that mean FBI agents are bad? No, you've got great FBI agents. And same with other alphabet agencies. But the leaders at top are corrupt. They're bad. Other stories I wanted to put on here I couldn't get to were about that specific thing. I might get to that next time if I can. A lot of times I get overwhelmed with too much information. Here's another movie. Defiance. For those who have not seen Red Dawn, please, please, please go buy it, rent it, watch it. Defiance is another one. And this is a true story about a man named Tutiev Belsky, which, by the way, Belsky is Russian for Bell. That means me. I'm Bell. Tutiev Belsky, he was Jewish. He was a Russian Jew. And when during World War II, he and his brother they had already been kind of smuggler pirates, so to speak, not always, in line with the law, but they became partisans. They became not mercenary, they became freedom fighters, just like in Red Dawn. Same thing. And he protected Jews in the woods that lived off the land to survive during the war. And they were militant. They defended themselves. Every man, woman, and child. And Jews are known for not being militant, not using guns, especially in this time. But the rule was everybody, man, woman, and child, carried a damn gun. And they used them to defend themselves against Nazi forces and other opportunists trying to get food or gear, whatever. And they survived off the land to survive until the end of the war, when they could come out of hiding and rejoin society. Tutiev here and his brother ended up coming to the United States and started a small trucking business or something like that. But because of this man's efforts, Tutiev Belsky and his brother and their efforts, there are hundreds of thousands of people that are alive today because of the simple effects of this man. And one of my favorite lines from this movie, there was a Jewish rabbi, and the Jewish rabbi said, "I lost my faith. I lost my faith." And he says, "Because I thought that God had abandoned us." And he says, "But I come to realize God did not abandon us. He sent you as an angel to protect and defend and fight for us." And he says, "You have given me my faith back." True. Those are true lines from the true story. And I think that's what it's all about. But we need to be like this, people. We are under invasion. And it's time. I'm not calling for violence, but I am calling that people recognize we are being invaded. And we need to stand up and stand out and start calling our political leaders accountable. Start raising voices. Because if you don't stop this now, then surviving for your life with a gun in your hand is going to be the only thing that's left. And God forbid we come to that time. My hope is that we can prevent that. Although I can tell you we're not. God already told me what was going to happen, unfortunately. But that doesn't mean we don't do our part. It doesn't mean we don't try and we don't fight. And I don't believe that doing the right thing is because you think you're going to win or even be successful. I think doing the right thing is worth doing just because it's the right damn thing to do. You know, I must be crazy. Anyway, God bless all of y'all. Please pray, 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 pray for our country. Pray for peace around the world. Pray for this escalation. Look, the only hope we have is that Trump's able to bypass the stealing of the election, and that he's able to turn around some of these things that the global Trump finally realizes something he did not understand in his first term of office. And that is how deep the deep state actually is. He didn't know what he was getting his hands into. Now he uses the term globalism. He understands it's a communist socialist takeover. These are things he did not understand in the first administration, and they're absolutely vitally key to understanding for our survival. That is the only chance we have. If they are able, and they will try in every way possible to steal the election, again, they did it last time flat out. And there's tons of proof of that on multiple levels for anyone who's willing to, have an open mind and trying to seek that. And there's been so much that's come out since then in stuff that they found that was not right and cheating. First of all, Nancy Pelosi's husband sits on the board of Dominion voting machines. That's a major conflict of interest. That should be illegal. He should be in prison. So, and our Dominion voting machines were made in China by our enemy. That again, that should be illegal, and people should be in prison over that. I mean, it's insane what we're experiencing right now. But pray as always, and remember, the only thing that matters is ultimately Jesus Christ is the King of the universe, of all souls, of all people, of all creation. Every star you see outside, every planet that's out there, for the entire universe. And ultimately, this life is a test. And that test is, do we come to know, love, and serve God? That's what it's all about. If we can accomplish that, then nothing here matters. This life is but the blink of an eye, a moment in time. Eternity is forever. Be on the right side. This is a no-brainer. You know something that gets me? Look at movies like Lord of the Rings, and even not the best example, but even Harry Potter. In Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter, the message was kind of the same at the end. Remember, in Harry Potter's like, now I'm not a big fan of Harry Potter because it's about witchcraft, and that's not Christian, even though Christians love it. They took Christianity out of schools and they put witchcraft in, and that's not good. But it was a brilliantly done production in the story, and as a part filmmaker, I love that aspect of it. Also, the message. Harry Potter said he pitied Voldemort because Voldemort was devoid of love. He was devoid of friendship. He was devoid of empathy. He used force. He had no love in him. His people had no love for him. They were just opportunists or scared, And even better example, Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings, they're like, hey, we're fighting for each other. We're fighting for each other, and we fight because we believe that there's still goodness in the world. And there's still beauty in this world. And that beauty is worth fighting for. But the beauty of the Lord of the Rings is they already won the battle. They already won the battle because they were fighting for truth, beauty, goodness, and for each other. And that's what it comes down to. You have to have that love in your heart for the good things in this world. And that's God. All right, everybody. Take care. God bless. Keep the lights on.